Hello, welcome to Boys Town. We're having a beautiful summer, it's actually spring day here. It feels like summer, it's going to be nice and warm. And we're really excited because this is History Month that's being celebrated across the United States. And here at Boys Town, the history of women is very important to us because Father Flanagan had influential women working with him his entire life, helping him to keep Boys Town open and giving him new ideas and important moral support as he tried to change the way children were treated across America. So here in our Hall of History Museum, in honor of our history of women here at Boys Town, we have a display and it covers the very early history of Boys Town, those early women that came forward to help Father Flanagan to influence his ideas and concepts and theories. So in our gallery here, we have a little display about that. It's actually scattered throughout the museum, so I hope you can come and see the display. But we're going to start here in the gallery with some important images, and we'll just kind of walk around the room and then let you see and hear about some of the influential people and women that helped Boys Town. And Father Flanagan, the first beginning of the influential women in Father Flanagan's life was his mother, Nora. His mother, Nora, was born and raised in Ireland, naturally, and she came from a family that actually lost their property, from what we're told in the village, and they became homeless. So when she was a young girl, she lost her home, and eventually she married Father Flanagan's dad, John Flanagan, and then they established a home together. So she knew what it was like to be homeless, and she instilled in her children a great faith in their fellow man and in their Catholic faith. And she built a strong bond of family within the home. She taught her children how to play music and how to sing and just be functioning as a family. And Father Flanagan often said many of his ideas on the care of children came from his mother and the way she treated him and his brothers and sisters when they were younger. So Nora Flanagan was one of the most important people in his life. She came to America with the rest of the Flanagan family, and she passed away in the 1930s, and she's buried here in Omaha with Father Flanagan's other family members. The next person important in Father Flanagan's life was his older sister, Miss Nellie. And Miss Nellie Flanagan, here she is right here shaking Father's hand. She was the first member of the Flanagan family to come to America at the turn of the century, and she wrote back to her older brother Patrick Flanagan and Father Flanagan, our Father Edward, and said, please come and join me in America. So they followed her to America, and eventually they came to Omaha. And once they came to Omaha, she became the housekeeper for Father Flanagan, and she lived with them for many years here in the village of Boys Town, up in the Father Flanagan home, and eventually at the rectory at Dowd Chapel. And she's been described by many people as the angel of Boys Town, because she really was never out front, never pushed herself forward. She always just did her work, helping Father Flanagan, especially when he was ill. She would take care of him. And so she was doing that behind-the-scenes work. We do have stories of boys going up to the Father Flanagan house, knocking on the back door, and she'd come out and give them a cookie every so often. And we have other staff members saying that she gave them love and compassion when they were here at Boys Town. And when Father Flanagan had his bouts of illness, Miss Nellie was the one who took care of him. And we have stories, too, from one of the sisters who was at Dowd Chapel, telling the story of Miss Nellie peeking around the corner, watching Father Flanagan as he said Mass, making sure he was okay. So she was a very important person in Father Flanagan's life. And she passed away in the 1950s, and she's also buried here in the village of Boys Town. Just as a side, our group here, the Quilters Guild, actually named the quilting machine Miss Nellie in honor of Father Flanagan's sister. And then we had a lady that came to Father Flanagan and helped him in the early days. She was his Catherine Dehaney. She was actually a real estate agent, and Father met her on a streetcar one day and said, I'm looking for some property. She helped Father Flanagan rent the German-American home, our second home, and then she stayed on and became Father Flanagan's assistant. And many years she worked for Father Flanagan as his secretary, helping him in those early days when there was almost no money, but she was also there to help Father and dedicated her time and energy to do that. So she represents many of those women who came forward, basically volunteering their time to help Father Flanagan change the way children are treated across America. In the museum, too, we talk about the Mothers Guild, and you've probably heard many stories about our Mothers Guild. We have a little special area here with some of the current quilts they've created. There's a great image here of the Mothers Guild in the early days. That's back in the 1920s, and the ladies are actually working in Father Flanagan's living room down to German-American homes. So they came together, they cooked for the kids, they made clothing, they did all these special projects. And as you know, the Mothers Guild continues on here at Boys Town. They're still serving the children, making quilts and creating special quilts for staff too. So we're very happy that they continue on that work that was begun by Father Flanagan's mother, and they put in countless hours of work. And then the museum, too, we like to feature special women that came here for awards. And one of them was Miss Dr. Mildred Jefferson. She was one of the first African-American women to graduate from Harvard Medical School, and she went on to be a pro-life advocate, and she was selected to receive the Father Flanagan Award and came out and received that. And then we have Mrs. Spencer Tracy, Louise Tracy. She was a great champion for children with Usher syndrome because her son John had been born with Usher syndrome, where children are born profoundly deaf and go blind by the time they're 14 or 15. So she set up a special center in California, the John Tracy Center, that is still functioning today. So she was the first recipient of our Father Flanagan Award because of the work she was doing, helping children. And we still carry on that project here at the Village of Boys Town. In this museum, too, we have a special panel on Miss Lily Okura. And Miss Lily Okura was a Japanese-American living in California when World War II began, and they had the internment of Japanese Americans. So she and her husband, Patrick Okura, right here, that's her husband, Patrick, they helped Father Flanagan work for a long time, bringing people out of the camps to live here at Boys Town. And in our display, we have some of the panels and some of the letters that were telegrams that went back and forth and the list of Japanese Americans that lived here. And she and Patrick Okura stayed in California, actually in the camps for a longer time until they were able to get a larger number of their friends and family members out of the camps to come and live here at Boys Town. And then she came and she actually worked here at Boys Town with her husband, Patrick Okura. And eventually her and Patrick moved to Washington, D.C., and they were great leaders in the civil rights movement for everyone, and especially the reparations for Japanese Americans. So we always look at Lily Okura as someone who came forward to help those individuals to do that, and she helped many, many people leave the camps and come here to Boys Town. So we really look forward and like to feature her here at Boys Town, showing the diversity of our people that we have working here. In the theater, too, right now, we have a little temporary item on display. This is actually the cross, and this is the cross that was at our great hall, the dining hall here on campus, built by Father Flanagan in 1946. It's where our high school boys and girls still eat their meals today. This cross was on display there since the 1950s, and the whole building has been renovated in the dining hall, modern facilities put in and cleaned. And this had hung on the walls for many years. It was dirty and damaged, so we sent it away. It's been 2 years under restoration, so it's all completed now. So it'll be rehung here in the next few days, but it's going to be up high. It's almost 2 stories tall in the chapel. So this is a chance for people to see this beautiful cross that was created for the children to have in the dining hall. So that's going to be going back up soon. But we put it here so guests can actually come and see it up close. And in the museum, too, we have some more displays here on special women here at Boys Town. We like to talk about the staff that work with the kids here. And we have one of our librarians that was here with the boys in the early days. You know, there weren't too many female staff. Many of the female staff that were here, the boys looked at them as being their mothers and their supporters. And many of the women said they had that great feeling when they're here at Boys Town. A special woman here at Boys Town was Miss Camille Natoya Moten. She was one of our first female family teachers here on campus with her husband, and she dedicated her life to taking care of children here in the Village of Boys Town in those early days with the family teachers. We also had Evelyn Wilson as another family teacher that was here at Boys Town in the early days too, working with the boys and the girls here as we transitioned to the family home program. We also have displayed special women that were donors and supporters of Father Flanagan. The first being Miss Mary Dowd. And Miss Mary Dowd famously saw the movie Boys Town after it came out in 1938. She wrote to Father Flanagan and said, "I want to give you money for a dormitory." Father said, "I just built 3 dormitories. How about a Catholic chapel?" And Miss Dowd gave the money to create the Dowd Chapel here at Boys Town. And it's still used by our boys and girls today. It's a beautiful building. It's actually a National Historic Landmark. And we have a new giving society called the Mary Dowd Society. If everyone would like to help with that project, it helps restore the chapel and promote Catholic education amongst our children here in the Village of Boys Town. And she's a great donor. After she gave that money, she entertained our football team when they visit New York City, because she was in New York City. And so she was a great friend to the children here at Boys Town. We also had another donor, Mrs. Quinlan. She came forward in the early days and devoted her time and energy to help Father Flanagan to keep the home going, and did many, many hours selfless work, along with Mrs. J. Shoup, another lady from the city of Omaha, who came forward, and she would help with the boys here and raise money and show them just kindness, because many of our boys had never had families. And then we had Mrs. Nash. Mrs. Nash was a local lady here in Omaha, and she was one of our first major donors. She gave Father Flanagan $10,000 in 1920. You can imagine how much money that was. And the first board of trustees met in Mrs. Nash's home, and she sat on our board of trustees with her sister-in-law. So it reflects the fact Boys Town, from the very beginning, we've had ladies sitting on our board of trustees. Father Flanagan engaged women in the Omaha community to be part of Boys Town to help manage the home. So it was very important to him. So Mrs. Nash was very important to us, and actually dedicated a trade school here in the name of Mrs. Nash. So she was one of our special donors here. A group of ladies that were here for many, many years at Boys Town were our sisters. And over the years, we had various orders of sisters, Notre Dame, we had Franciscan German sisters, and then we had the Polish Kunaguda sisters that were here for the longest time. And we have some of the images of those sisters that were here. They worked in the offices. One sister, she's packing the bags for the boys. They're getting ready to go on their choir tour, so she's getting their suitcases ready to go. And then we had sisters that were teaching in the classroom here on campus too for many years. And again, many of the boys had never had mothers, and so many of them looked at the sisters as being their mothers. And the sisters loved being here. We went and interviewed a number of the sisters, and they said even though in their 80s and 90s, they still want to come back to Boys Town today and be here with the boys. They loved being here on campus. They had Sister Rita, was one of our first sisters that came here. She came to Boys Town about 1918, 1919. She was one of the Notre Dame sisters that were out here on campus with Father Flanagan in the early days. Those poor sisters cooked and cleaned and just dedicated their lives to the children. And then we have an image of one of the other sisters here. Actually, she's standing in front. Here's the Hall of History Museum, what it looked like in the 30s. These sisters, again, were here on campus up to the 1970s when they left campus. But up to that time, they did everything on the grounds, taking care of the boys. And many of the boys, when they got older, would actually go and visit the sisters at their retirement community because they considered them to be their mothers. And this is just a little history that we have on the history of women here at Boys Town. Again, please come to the museum. Throughout the museum, we have other individuals, other women we've highlighted, teachers, cooks, the people who took care of the children, the nurses, all those individuals that made a life here for the children here in the village of Boys Town. They're very vital to us, and we celebrate our women employees here at Boys Town every day. And as I always say, you're more than welcome to come and visit the Hall of History. We're open through about 365 days a year, closed for major holidays. So please come and visit us anytime. And if you want to support Father Flanagan and his ministry, please go to boystown.org and learn how you can be part of the program that Father Flanagan created to save children and heal families across America. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you soon here in the village of Boys Town.